Hey everybody, welcome back to the garage. If this is your first time visiting my channel, please go ahead and click on subscribe and also click on the bell to receive all the updates and activity on my channel. So today we're going to review the process on what you need to do to service the exhaust valves on your Polaris Snowmobile. So today we have a 2012 Polaris Switchback Adventure 600. I just bought this about a week ago, and so we're going to be pulling off the exhaust valves to do a cleaning on them and essentially just general maintenance on it. So with that being said, why don't we go ahead and start the process and review what you need to do. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove the side panels. So the side panels on this Polaris and pretty much any pro ride chassis is very easy. All you can do is just going to loosen the quarter turn fasteners on both sides. There's two on each one. And then you can loosen up the bungee cord, and then you're going to pull it down, and then you'll pull the panel off. We're going to do that on both sides, and then we're going to go ahead and remove the hood. Alright, so now that the side panels have been removed on both sides, the next step in this process is removal of the hood. There are 4 fasteners holding the hood on at this point. There's 2 of these push pins right here. There's one on each side. And then there are 2 T40 fasteners that are holding the hood on. That needs to be removed. Once those 2 are off, the next thing you have to do is remove the hood harness. And the hood harness is right there. There's a piece of duct tape on it that's from the previous owner. We're going to remove that, and then the wiring harness will be able to be split. Alright, now that you have the hood removed and you have the engine compartment exposed, this is what we're looking at. There are the 2 exhaust valves that we're going to pull out. So the magneto side, which is the one on the left, is pretty accessible, but the one on the PTO side, it's blocked by the steering shaft. So what we need to do is we need to remove the 2 13mm bolts. There's one right there. And then there's one on the other side. So what we're going to do first is we're going to remove those 2 bolts, and that will allow the steering shaft to be moved out of the way to get the PTO exhaust valve removed. So let's do that now. Alright, so now that you have the retaining bolts for the steering shaft mount loosened, now we're going to go ahead and start the process of removing the actual exhaust valve from the engine. So if you look, you're going to see 4 10mm bolts. So there's one that's dyed pink right now. So what we're going to do is we're not going to touch those, because those are actually holding the plastic cover onto the exhaust valve itself. What we're going to do is we're going to remove this one at 3 o'clock and the corresponding one at 9 o'clock. Those are the actual bolts that hold the exhaust valve onto the engine. So we're going to do that now. Again, those are 10mm bolts. Alright, so now that we have the mounting bolts removed from the exhaust valve assembly, last thing you want to do is before you start pulling it out, remove slide the clamp up from the hose that's being held on the barb. Remove that, and then you're going to remove the exhaust valve out of the engine. So just remember which side is which, as far as which side is the magneto, which side is the PTO. Even though they are identical, in case you're doing any inspection, you want to remember which one came from what side. So why don't we go ahead and do that now. Alright, so now that we have the exhaust valves removed from the engine, we have them on the bench. So as far as knowing if you have a major issue with the valves, as far as torn bellows or leaking oil or anything like that, usually the telltale sign of that something is going on is if you look at the caps while when the engine is running, if the bellows are torn, and it will actually make more sense when we actually get the caps off. But if the bellows are torn, what you'll see is you'll see exhaust smoke coming out of these holes on both sides. Because if the bellows are torn, what's happening is exhaust gas is moving past the bellows, and then it's going to exit out of the exhaust valve. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on one side at a time. Again, this is the PTO side. If you remember, there was a pink stain on that fastener, and that is a magneto side. So we're going to do one side at a time, just so we don't get mixed up as far as what side was which, even though they are identical. But again, if you're doing some type of inspection process as far as general health of the engine, you'll want to know what side is which. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and work on the magneto side. I'm sorry, the PTO side. And again, these are 10mm bolts, just like it was on the other one. And we're going to basically pop the cap off and start getting into it. So I'm going to go do that now. All right, so now that we've removed the cap, now you have a better explanation of how this thing works. So essentially, here's the stud to the exhaust valve, which is right there. We're going to go a little bit more detail on that. So then there's the stud to the exhaust valve. This is the bellows itself. Here's a spring that goes on it, and essentially the spring, once everything is assembled, it pushes up against the cap and it drives the valve closed. So when there's no load on it. So essentially what we're talking about is why you're removing this from the engine is this is the exhaust valve itself. As you can look, there's a lot of buildup on it from two-stroke oil and just exhaust buildup. So what we're going to do is we're going to take either some carb cleaner or some brake parts cleaner, some penetrating fluid, whatever we have on hand, and some Scotch-Brite, and we're just going to clean it all the excessive buildup off the exhaust valve. So what it will do is it will move freely inside the cylinder. So why don't we go ahead and do that now, and we'll go on to the next step. Alright, so after about 5 minutes using some carb cleaner and some Scotch-Brite, the exhaust valve is nice and clean. Okay, so both sides. So that's the side with the ports, that is the top, and the side with the no ports, that is the bottom. And the reason why you have to remember that is when you go to reassemble the cap, you have to remember what side is the top and what side is the bottom, right? Because if you look, as we're spinning this, the bellows is turning with it, right? So the last thing you want to do is, and right now we'll just do it as an example, right? And say you're getting ready to put it in there and then you realize it doesn't fit, right? And we're putting the cap on, right? So because you got to remember on that cap there's a sealing surface for the bellows, and once you put that on there, the bellows is not going to be able to turn. So if you try to go spin the exhaust valve into the right orientation, it's not going to spin. And if you try to force it, you're going to turn you're going to tear the bellows. So what you always want to remember is before you put that cap on, put it in the right position. You always know what side is the top based on location of the barb, and that's the right position. So once you do that, then you can put the cap on and make sure you have the Polaris star going up and down like that. Make sure it's not sideways, right? Make sure it's up and down. Make sure you do quality work, attention to detail. So once you do that, that is going to be the correct position. So you're going to put the spring back in and go from there. And so that's about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the magneto side, and then we're going to put this back in. We'll check the gaskets on the engine, make sure they're in good shape, and go ahead and do the reassembly. Alright, so what you want to do now is before reassembly is you want to take a look at the gaskets on the engine. These gaskets are in excellent condition. Even though I do have another set, I'm not going to replace them. These things are not torn. I have a feeling that based on what I saw in the exhaust valves, this thing was cleaned not too long ago. Based on what the previous owner told me, kind of makes sense. I know he was meticulous on maintenance, and then he didn't put a lot of miles on it. So, but anyway, if after you're removing the exhaust valves, the gaskets are torn, go ahead and replace them. And while you're at it, you can also take some brake cleaner or some parts cleaner and essentially just clean the exhaust valve assembly, well, where the exhaust valve actually goes into the cylinder, and clean that up. I've already taken a look at it, and for the most part it's pretty clean. So at this point there's nothing else that I need to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop the exhaust valves back into place, and then we'll torque them down. Alright, so now that the exhaust valves are back in, you got the two hoses installed. You want to go ahead and torque everything down. So the torque rating on the exhaust valves from the Polaris service manual is anywhere from 10.5 to 13.5 foot-pounds. Make sure you're using a torque wrench on those. You don't want to over tighten them and strip them. You can have a real bad day if you do. And the torque rating on these are 15 foot-pounds from Polaris. So essentially that's it. As you can see, it's really not that involved to get it done. What you want to do is, as you're tightening everything up and buttoning everything up, before you put all the panels, just take a quick overview. Make sure you didn't miss anything, and make sure you did no harm in your repair. Check for any loose wires, stuff along that lines. So essentially that's it. I hope this helps everybody out. If there's any thoughts, questions, concerns, go ahead and leave them in the comments box. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.